Right now, your social media feed is actually utilizing a 3,000-year-old psychological curse to just, keep you scrolling.
Yeah, and the most incredible part is that we don't even realize we are trapped in it. I mean, we use these ancient frameworks every single day,
Right.
from like corporate burnout to political polarization, and we do it without ever really looking at the original source code.
Well, that is exactly what we are doing today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We have this really fascinating source article today, and it breaks down 7 everyday English phrases that are completely derived from Greek mythology.
Yeah, it's a great read.
And our mission for this deep dive is to shortcut your path, as the listener, to being truly well-informed. We're going to unpack the ancient DNA of your modern vocabulary.
Exactly, because this isn't just about, memorizing dusty trivia for a pub quiz or something.
Right. No one wants that.
No, definitely not. We are looking at how the ancient Greeks built these psychological models that just perfectly map onto our current struggles.
Yeah, I love that. Like, you might not sit down to read Homer or Sophocles on a Tuesday night.
Probably not.
But the ghosts of those authors are constantly in your mouth. The language we use shapes how we perceive our reality, right?
It totally does. And right now, our reality is being described by myths that are literally thousands of years old.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the one I mentioned at the top. Because it deals really heavily with how we use language to lie to ourselves.
Yes. The architecture of self-deception.
Exactly. We talk constantly about the dangers of being trapped in an echo chamber online. But this concept has a surprisingly ancient origin story, doesn't it?
It really does. It requires peeling back multiple layers of history. So the modern understanding of an echo chamber starts with a natural acoustic phenomenon.
Right.
And the tragic Greek story that was invented to explain it. Echo was this beautiful mountain nymph.
Okay.
And Zeus gave her the job of distracting his wife, Hera, by just talking incessantly to her.
Which is a terrible job to have, by the way.
Oh, the worst. And when Hera finally realized she was being played, she punished Echo with a very specific curse.
Wait, what was it?
She stripped Echo of her ability to formulate her own thoughts. She was forced to only repeat the words of others.
Right, and then Echo falls in love with Narcissus.
Yeah.
He rejects her, obviously.
Yeah, classic Narcissus.
And she basically just wastes away in the mountains until absolutely nothing is left but her repetitive voice.
Exactly.
But wait, I want to challenge the modern application of this for a second. Because Narcissus actively ignored Echo.
He did.
But modern echo chambers on social media, they are all about aggressive validation. It's people furiously agreeing with each other.
Right.
So doesn't the way we use it today actually contradict the premise of the myth?
What's fascinating here is that is the exact crucial tension the source highlights.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the myth is about a woman stripped of original thought because of someone else's narcissism.
Right.
But in the modern algorithmic environment, we are Narcissus, and the algorithm itself is Echo.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense. It's wild to think that modern algorithmic social media feeds are basically doing to us what Hera's curse did to Echo.
Yes.
Just stripping us of original thought until we just repeat what we hear.
Exactly. We stare into the screen, which, acts as our reflecting pool. And the algorithm just bounces our own ideological reflection back at us.
That is so creepy when you put it like that.
It is. But to understand how we got from a mountain nymph to modern tech, you really have to look at the architectural evolution in between.
Like actual physical buildings.
Yeah. As time went on, human beings started deliberately designing literal echo chambers. Think of the massive cathedrals and churches built centuries ago.
Yeah.
They were designed to be highly resonant, so a single choir or a single religious leader would sound vastly more powerful than ordinary human voices ever could.
Oh, I see. So they were basically weaponizing the acoustics to simulate prominence.
That is exactly it.
Yeah.
And modern communications theory took that cathedral concept and applied it to insular social groups. The algorithmic feed simulates prominence. It takes a fringe ideology and echoes it so loudly that you are tricked into believing it is the dominant voice of the world.
So it is a completely self-obsessed environment.
Totally. It's an ideological blindness born entirely from narcissism.
Man, this idea of ideological blindness, like convincing yourself that your distorted view of reality is the absolute truth. It is essentially just high-level ego protection.
Oh, 100%.
Which ties directly into another ancient concept from our sources about lying to yourself, which is Sour grapes.
Yes, sour grapes. Now, to be historically precise here, this one comes from Aesop's fables.
Right, which date back to around, 600 BC?
Exactly. And fables are technically distinct from the divine mythology of the Greeks, but they were born from the exact same cultural era.
They share all those same ancient values about human nature.
Exactly.
So we all know the basic plot here, right? A
Yeah.
fox sees this delicious-looking bundle of grapes on a vine.
Yep.
He jumps, he climbs, he tries every conceivable way to get them, but he just keeps failing.
Right, he can't reach them.
And instead of admitting he isn't capable of reaching them, he just struts away, claiming it was foolish to even try because the grapes were probably sour anyway.
Yeah, it's such a classic image.
But why did this specific fable stick so hard in the English language?
Well, because it is the absolute perfect distillation of cognitive dissonance.
Okay, how so?
The Library of Congress translation actually gives us a brilliant summary of the moral. It says, "There are many who pretend to despise and belittle that which is beyond their reach,
Wow.
because the human brain struggles violently with the sting of failure. So, to resolve the internal conflict of wanting something and not getting it, we just rewrite reality."
We just tell ourselves we didn't want it anyway.
Exactly. And the source notes that by the 1760s, this specific story element had fully entered the English language as a diagnostic tool.
A diagnostic tool for hypocrisy.
Precisely. It allows an outsider to spot the hidden bias that the bitter person is just completely blind to.
Right? Like if a venture capitalist desperately tries to invest in a startup, gets rejected by the founders, and then immediately goes to the press claiming the startup's technology is worthless.
Yes, that's exactly it. That is sour grapes.
It's pure self-deception. They convince themselves that grapes are sour so they never have to analyze why they failed to jump high enough in the first place.
Yep, it protects the ego.
But if self-deception protects our ego in the short term, what happens when we wire that deception so deeply into our personality that it destroys us?
Well, that is when we move from self-deception to an unavoidable downfall.
The fatal flaw.
Yes,
Right.
the fatal flaw. Now, many people today associate this with, like, the Percy Jackson books or maybe some basic screenwriting advice.
Sure.
But to trace the real DNA of the phrase, we have to go way back to Aristotle.
Okay.
He used the Greek word hamartia to describe how characters made decisions that led to their ruin and tragedies.
But the source points out a massive misconception here, right? Aristotle wasn't originally calling it a moral failure, was he?
Not at all. And this is so interesting. Hamartia was literally an archery term.
Wait, really? Archery?
Yeah, it just meant to miss the mark.
Oh, wow.
It described an error in judgment or, a tragic miscalculation. It was not this deep, inherent indictment of the character's blackened soul.
So it wasn't about being a bad person.
No, not originally. But over centuries, scholars heavily moralized the concept. They rebranded it as a tragic flaw to teach audiences a specific ethical lesson.
Like, watch this character fail because of their arrogance and learn to be humble.
Exactly, and then it evolved again.
Right. As Western literature adapted into Christian contexts, the concept shifted from a Greek error in judgment to a religious sin.
Yes.
Characters were now seen as dying because of their inherent sins, which eventually gave us the alliterative, heavy phrase we use today, the fatal flaw.
Right.
So what does this all mean for us today? Well, the way I think about it, especially when we apply it to modern figures like, say, politicians who just refuse to compromise or a brilliant tech founder who trusts the wrong people,
Yeah,
it's like a software bug in your personality.
I like that.
You can have a state-of-the-art operating system, incredible processing power, great intentions, but you have this one deeply rooted, unpatchable line of bad code.
Exactly.
And eventually, under the right conditions, that single line of code just crashes the whole machine.
That is an excellent analogy. And, the most famous software bug in all of mythology, one that completely dominates modern corporate culture, is unchecked ambition.
Oh, flying too close to the sun.
Yes. The story of Icarus.
Now, we don't need to rehash the whole narrative. We all know Daedalus built the wax wings, Icarus ignored the warning, flew too high, the sun melted the wax, and he fell into the sea.
Right, everyone knows that part.
And we hear about the Icarus syndrome all the time in business seminars to describe executives who launch these grand schemes way beyond their capabilities and just crash the company.
We do, but our source points out a massive, fascinating blind spot in how we talk about this myth.
Okay, what are we missing?
We completely ignore half of Daedalus's warning. Yeah. Before they took flight, Daedalus didn't just warn his son about the sun. He explicitly warned Icarus not to fly too low.
Wait, why? Why would flying low be dangerous?
Because if he flew too close to the ocean waves, the sea spray would soak into the feathers.
Oh, wow.
The dampness would make the wings too heavy, and the sheer weight of the water would just drag him down to drown in the ocean.
I have never heard that part of the story used in a modern context.
It was an aerodynamic tightrope. It was just as dangerous to fly too low as it was to fly too high.
That fundamentally changes the entire lesson. I mean, we are so culturally obsessed with punishing hubris and arrogance that we completely ignore the equal danger of locking ambition.
Exactly.
The dampness of complacency is just as lethal as the heat of ambition.
That is a great way to put it. And if we look at the psychology of why Icarus flew higher, it wasn't just foolish arrogance.
Right.
He flew higher because he had already successfully exceeded his own expectations. He was doing the impossible. He was a human being in flight.
It's the absolute intoxication of breaking a barrier.
Exactly. When you achieve what you previously thought was impossible, your brain's risk assessment mechanisms are entirely rewritten.
So it isn't just a story about a foolish kid.
No, it's a profound observation about how early success can completely blind us to long-term systemic risks.
But when that crash inevitably happens, when the software bug takes over or the wings melt, the fallout isn't always a sudden, dramatic plunge into the sea.
Unfortunately not.
Often, the consequence of our ambition failing is being left with this crushing, unending burden. We end up carrying the weight of the world.
Oh, yeah. This is a phrase that strikes a very raw nerve with modern audiences, particularly when we examine the psychology of workplace burnout. Now, originally, this was a shockingly literal punishment.
Right. We are talking about Atlas.
Yes, the Titan who fought against Zeus. When the Olympians won the cosmic war, Zeus condemned Atlas to physically hold up the heavens, standing at the western edge of the earth.
And obviously, we use the phrase metaphorically all the time today to describe someone taking on just way too much responsibility.
Right. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source material draws a brilliant dual perspective parallel between the myth of Atlas and modern psychological burnout.
Okay, break that down for me.
There is a massive disconnect between how the burden is perceived externally versus how it is experienced internally.
Right.
When you are the one carrying the weight of the world, say, you are keeping a failing department afloat at your company or managing a major crisis in your family, all you feel is the agonizing, crushing strain.
Yeah, you're just exhausted.
Exactly. But outsiders only see your strength.
They praise your dedication.
They admire your capacity to handle it all, which completely blinds them to the fact that your spine is basically breaking.
Wow.
But the true horror of Atlas's punishment, and really the true anatomical root of modern burnout, isn't just the sheer heaviness of the task, it is the uncertainty.
Explain that. Why is the uncertainty the breaking point?
Because the mammalian brain can actually endure incredible amounts of acute stress, as long as there's a visible finish line.
Right, if you know it's going to end.
Exactly. But Atlas never knew if he was going to have to hold up the heavens for one more day or for eternity. There was absolutely no endpoint.
That is terrifying.
When you do not know when the burden will be lifted, your stress hormones have zero recovery period. The weight feels infinitely heavier because you are simultaneously carrying today's burden and the anticipation of tomorrow's burden.
And when you are crushed by that level of uncertainty, when your cognitive load is just totally maxed out, your decision-making starts to fray.
Oh, completely.
You inevitably get pushed into corners where there are no good answers.
Yeah.
You find yourself caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yes. Now, linguistically, the exact English phrasing of between a rock and a hard place only dates back to early 20th century America.
Okay.
But the conceptual framework is pure ancient Greek. It comes straight from Homer's Odyssey.
See, here's where it gets really interesting for me. I actually want to push back a little on how casually we use this phrase today.
Oh, how so?
Because it borders on insulting to the original text. You hear people say, like, oh, I'm really stuck between a rock and a hard place, choosing between these two bad meeting times for next week.
Right, like a mild inconvenience.
Exactly. But when you say that, you are literally comparing a Tuesday calendar conflict to sacrificing your friends to a six-headed sea monster.
It is quite the escalation.
Because Odysseus was trying to sail his crew through the Strait of Messina, and he had to choose between two horrifying sea monsters, right?
Right. On one side is Scylla, the six-headed monster guaranteed to take 6 of your crew members. And on the other side is Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that will just suck down the entire ship and kill absolutely everyone.
It is the ultimate utilitarian nightmare. There is no middle path. Odysseus has to make a brutal calculation.
He does. He deliberately sails closer to Scylla. He actively chooses to sacrifice 6 of his own men just to save the rest of the ship.
Why does the human brain struggle so deeply with that kind of choice? Obviously, it's a traumatic scenario, but mathematically, saving the ship is the right answer, isn't it?
It's a classic iteration of the trolley problem. We struggle with it because our moral psychology draws a massive distinction between passive harm and active sacrifice.
Oh, I see.
If Odysseus sailed down the middle and the whirlpool took them, it could be written off as an act of nature. A tragic failure, sure, but not a murder.
Right.
But by steering towards Scylla, he is actively committing a sacrifice.
So the trauma of being between the rock and a hard place isn't just that both options are bad.
No, it is the moral injury of having to take active responsibility for a devastating outcome.
That is profound. And when you are in that state, exhausted from carrying the weight of Atlas, traumatized by making these utilitarian sacrifices, that is precisely when your guard completely drops.
You're just depleted.
Exactly. Desperate people look for easy outs. And that makes us uniquely vulnerable to false saviors, which leads us to a very stark warning from our sources. Beware Greeks bearing gifts.
Yes. This is the ancient warning that something is just too good to be true. And it is a fascinating case study in how these phrases evolve.
Because it's Roman, right?
Yes. It's actually a reference to Greek mythology that comes to us entirely through Roman mythology. It originates from the Roman epic, the Aeneid.
The story of the Trojan horse.
Exactly. The Greek army fakes a retreat and leaves this massive wooden horse outside the walls of Troy.
And the Trojans think they've finally won the war.
Right. But a Trojan priest steps forward. He cautions his people against bringing this massive trophy inside their defenses. And he famously announces, "I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts."
And then, abruptly, 2 giant sea serpents emerge from the water and just assassinate the priest.
Yeah, quite the timing.
The Trojans take the serpent attack as a divine sign that the priest was wrong. So they drag the wooden horse inside, and the Greek soldiers hiding in the belly of the horse open the gates at night and slaughter everyone.
It's a brutal story, but the source notes there is an even older, deeper origin for this psychological sentiment.
Really? Older than the Aeneid?
Yeah. If you look at Sophocles' play Ajax, the main character refers to an ancient proverb. He says, "Foes' gifts are no gifts, profit bring they none."
Foes' gifts are no gift.
Then the tragic irony in that play is that Ajax uses a gift, which is the sword of his former enemy Hector, to commit suicide.
Oh, wow.
It is this brutal exploration of how difficult it is for the human brain to process unexpected kindness from an adversary.
That makes total sense. When we are cognitively depleted, we just want to believe that the conflict is over.
Exactly. We want to believe the office bully is suddenly offering to help out of the goodness of their heart.
But the phrase endures as an absolute mandate for vigilance.
It does. It tells us that toxic alliances are rarely forced upon us. They are usually invited through the front door because they were disguised as a reward.
Man, this has been an incredible journey. For you listening, I genuinely hope this deep dive has fundamentally rewired the way you hear these phrases.
I know it has for me.
We've explored how our frustrations with social media algorithms share DNA with a cursed mountain nymph. We've seen how corporate burnout traces back to a titan holding up the heavens without a finish line in sight.
Yeah.
And we've unpacked the utilitarian horror hiding inside our daily complaints about being caught between a rock and a hard place. You are now armed with the psychological history of the words you use every single day.
It really highlights the sheer power of linguistic endurance. And, looking at these sources leaves me with one final provocative thought for everyone.
Lay it on us.
If a 3,000-year-old story about a doomed flight with wax wings provided the exact vocabulary we use today for modern executive failure, what events or technologies are we living through right now that will become the idioms of humanity thousands of years from now?
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Right. Will someone in the year 5000 casually tell a friend that they are stuck in the algorithm as a metaphor for an inescapable bad relationship?
That is a brilliant question. We are currently writing the mythology of the future without even knowing it. So the next time you find yourself speaking on autopilot, stop and ask yourself what ancient engine is actually driving your words. Keep questioning the world around you, keep diving deep, and we will see you next time.